When I got into my early to mid 30s and still not only was I single, but I had still never had an actual relationship, I was pretty convinced that there was no amount of professional success that was going to make me feel in those moments like I was where I was supposed to be. I was diagnosed with cancer when my daughter was 7 months old. And so I went from this joy of finally having my daughter after having gone through so much loss with our IVF journey, and thinking maybe now is the happy ending. Now is when everything is going to click and fall into place. And then realizing just how much life has other plans. We are doing life for the first time. Every
Mm.
day we wake up, it is the first time we are doing that day. How are we supposed to know what to do and how to make it perfect?
Hello and welcome to Ego is Here. Today I'm joined by Laura Behnke, whose journey will challenge how you think about success, timing, and what it really means to live on your own path. Hello, Laura.
Hi, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you because your story is so inspiring, so motivating. And I'm so glad to have you here, sharing it with us. So, Laura,
Thank you.
my first question is when you hear the phrase, don't worry, it will happen, what memories or feelings does it bring up for you?
Oh, that is a tough phrase for me. It was one that was always said to me as I was growing up whenever things weren't going the way that I wanted them to, specifically about having a partner, a boyfriend, a romantic relationship, which I never had growing up. And the thing that people always said to me, especially the wiser, I'll use that in quotes, older adults would tell me is, don't worry, it's gonna happen. It was their way of trying to make, I think, themselves feel a little bit better. Like, if I could just make her stop being upset about this. And at the
Yes.
same time, I think that, my mom said it to me a lot. And
Mm.
she and I have talked about now, how at one point when I was an adult, I had to tell her, stop saying this to me, please. But so we've spoken about this a lot, and she's like, I didn't know what to say. And I truly wanted to believe that, yes, it was going to happen. I
Uh-huh.
went all through childhood, school, high school, college, university, all of that without ever having had a boyfriend. And then into my early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, 30s without ever having had a boyfriend. And still there was that, don't worry, it will happen. And at some point, it begins to feel almost worse than you were already feeling not having the
Mm.
thing that you wanted, because you've been told for so many years that, oh, just stop worrying, which doesn't validate the feelings that you have
Yes, of
about
course
not
not.
having what you want. But also it tells you it's going to happen. And so when it doesn't, I would continue to wonder, well, then what must I be doing wrong that
Mm.
it is continuing not to happen when everyone has assured me this is what's going to happen? When in reality, I just needed somebody to say, oh my gosh, this is hard. This is not what you wanted. This is not the way you imagined your life going. It is unfair on a lot of levels to not have the things that you so badly want and had imagined for yourself. But you're doing your best. You are doing your best with what you have, and I'm proud of you. That's what I wanted people to tell me. That's a little bit harder though than, don't worry, it'll happen.
Of course it is. But did professional success ever feel like proof you were okay even when you weren't?
I realized when I was in high school, when I was 16, 17, 18, and I was starting to see my friends all have boyfriends and I didn't.
Mm.
But I really had ideas about what I wanted to do with my life professionally. And I realized, like, as I was about to graduate high school, that I needed to make sure I could take care of myself. I needed to make sure that I had something that was more within my control, that would be something that kept me going, that I could consider success, that would make me happy, that would give me enough financial support to be able to take care
Mhm.
of myself. And so I really, really focused on a career. And my original career was I was a TV sports anchor and reporter for 16 years, and in college is when I really zeroed in on that, and it became my life. I always was looking for a partner. I always wanted that above anything else. But as I started to realize just how little control I had over that happening, it was very easy then to throw as much of myself as possible as I could into a career that really does demand everything
Mm.
of you. So I worked my way up the ranks in TV, and I made it to New York City, the number one market in the United States. And I was at the number one station in the number one market. I had millions of people who I would speak to on a nightly basis. And I loved it. Um, but it wasn't enough to make me
Mhm.
not doubt where I was and what my success was, and all of that. When I got into my early to mid 30s and still not only was I single, but I had still never had an actual relationship. I was pretty convinced that there was no amount of professional success that was going to make me feel in those moments like I was where I was supposed to be, because I
Yes.
wanted so badly to be
Yes.
partnered and to be able to start a family. And I was just watching the timeline that I had in my head that I kept revamping as I got older just seemed to become more and more, it felt impossible at the time. And
Mhm.
that was really hard. So I leaned on my job a lot, and I loved my career at the time. There's a reason I'm not in it anymore. But at the time I loved it. But I always felt that I wasn't where I was supposed to be. And I really wish that I had not felt that way. I wish that, because I was in such a great place in so many ways, but we have a way of always focusing and fixating on that one thing that we don't have.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. What were you most afraid people would silently assume about you?
Oh, it was my biggest secret that I was not only single but had never had a relationship. As a public figure, being on television, having people
Mhm.
already make major assumptions about me. I mean, I was a blonde-haired woman doing sports. I knew a lot about sports. I could go toe to toe with any of my male coworkers, but you already, just coming on camera as a woman, people questioned why you were there, what your actual qualifications were, if you knew what you were talking about, or if you were just, another pretty face that was a diversity hire. So I already was battling that, which causes people to form assumptions about you. And, we live in a society that loves to put people down
Mhm.
by talking about their lack of romantic success. It's, "Oh,
Yes.
well, no
Yes.
wonder they're single," or, "Oh, nobody's gonna wanna sleep with them," or,
Mhm.
I just if you wanna make fun of somebody, if you wanna put them down, go right for the fact that they can't have romantic success. Even if they have, like, what, it doesn't matter. It's a put down that people love to use. So, considering that was my reality, I was terrified that people would know. I mean, I here I am on TV in New York City. I had already had this pressure by myself, but also by everything around me, that I had to be absolutely perfect. I couldn't make mistakes. I had to look perfect. My hair had to be perfect. My makeup had to be perfect. My clothes had to be
Yeah.
perfect. If I slipped up and let in any amount of humanity to who I was, I just worried that I would lose all credibility. So the absolute last thing I wanted was for people to know that I was single and had always been. And then what assumptions would they form then? And I look back at it now, and I totally understand why I felt that way. I also it just hurts my heart a little bit to know just how much it mattered to me what other people thought. And it still does. I don't want to pretend like, oh, I reached this state of, oh, no, now I don't care anymore. I care less, but I do still
Hmm.
care. So I understand where I was at that point. But, it just, that's a huge reason I'm not in TV anymore. I could not keep up that perfection anymore. Even though when I left TV, I was with my husband. He was my fiance at the time. We were going to be getting married in a few months when I left the business, so I already had gotten past that. But just the overall desire for perfection and the pressure that that business puts on you was just I got too old to want to put up with it anymore.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, it's so hard. Laura, you said something about defining ourselves by the one thing that we don't have. Why do you think that we end up doing that to ourselves? Like we do not look at all the other things that we have accomplished, and we so much focus on the one thing, and we let that one thing define the way we see ourselves, our worth.
Absolutely. And I think it's human nature. I think we always want to be better. We always have this idea in our head about the next milestones that we want to reach, the next, professional successes that we're going after, the next personal milestones that we want to check off, the societal milestones that everybody assumes we should be doing as we become adults and
Yes.
and grow up. And we put ourselves on this kind of conveyor belt of what we are supposed to do in our lives, what has been ingrained in us from such an early age of what is normal, what is successful. And it's so much easier, unfortunately, it's so much easier to focus on what we don't have. So then we have like, okay, this is maybe we can give ourselves what we think is a step-by-step plan to get those things instead of
Hmm.
to actually think, oh, okay, I can relax now. I can be happy about the things that I do have. That's just not a culture that we live in. I mean, hustle
No,
culture right now
no.
is just driving people into the ground, but it focuses all on you are never done. Like keep going. Nothing is enough. And then the rise of social media, and all you have to do is open up your phone and you see people whose you do not know what their lives are. You do not know half of their story, but you see what they
Yes.
put out there.
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
is so easy for us to compare our entire life picture because we know our entire life with their teeny tiny snippet of happiness and perfection that they have chosen specifically to show you and show the
Yes.
world. And that's what we're comparing our reality to. I mean, it- we just live in a world that is constantly telling us you have to have that next thing. You have to just keep
Hmm.
going,
Hmm.
which makes, if you sit back and think, I am really happy with where my life is. Uh, there's always kind of that little voice of society telling you, but what, you can't relax. It's not enough. It's not enough. And I think that is why there's such a meditation and the wellness world of trying to help you find yourself and go inward is so important, but also so hard to do because we're having to kind of try to rewire everything that's been programmed in us from such an early age of just go 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 go.
Yes, all the beliefs. Yeah, of course, of course. Because we try to look like we have it all together, but does anyone really have it all together? I really wonder.
No. No. I mean, and that's the thing, everything that we all we can know about other people is what they want us to know, what they put out there for us to
Hmm.
know, for the
Hmm.
most part. And so, of course, we're just getting these little ideas. I mean, how often do you see somebody on, like, I'm just going to use social media because we are all on it. You see somebody on social media you've been following for years. Maybe they're an influencer. Maybe their house is
Yeah.
perfect. Their life looks perfect. They are constantly telling you, these are all the great skincare products I use. This is how I keep my house great. This is how I raise my kids. These are the products that you need. And you look at their amazing vacations and you look at just all the things in their life and you are like, I could never compete with that. I am not there. I have so many ways that I struggle. And then all of a sudden one day they post, so my husband and I are getting divorced. And you
Yes.
had no clue.
Mhm.
And there, and that's just an example. We don't know everything about everyone's lives.
No,
And
no, no.
if anybody tries to tell you that they have all the answers, uh, I would like that they're either lying, or I would like just like a tiny bit of their delusion to be able to just like ingrain in my mind just a little bit more, because no one does,
No
and
one, no one.
that's
No.
another thing that I struggle with so much in this hustle culture world right now, is that there are so many people who are out there who are trying to tell you every single part of your life, how you can make it better and how they have the steps to do it. Whether you're an
Right. Mhm.
entrepreneur, whether you have got a passion you want to turn into a side hustle, whether you're a parent who is just trying to get your kid to
And
sleep,
in how many
whether
days,
you're
right?
aging.
They
Yeah,
even know the
exactly. You're
days, like
aging and you want to know how what you should be doing to not look like you're aging. And there is a step by step guide for everything, because
mhm.
people know they can monetize it, and people know what
Yes.
other people's pain points are and where you're
Mm.
vulnerable. And, I will be the first to say I love a step by step guide. If somebody can tell me, do it like this and boom, 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 done, like I love to follow a guide. Guides, most of the time, are bullshit. They do not apply
Yes,
to
yes,
each
yes,
person
yes.
individually, and there's no one way. Nobody knows. Nobody has it all together, no matter what they want you to think. So if they're telling you they do, that's a red flag, in my opinion.
And in mine as well. So, can the pressure of timelines push us into people or situations that don't serve us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you just look, the pressure that I had put on myself initially in the romance department, so many people, women especially, have these feelings and these pressures, whether it is from society, whether it's from their family, their community, whether it's just from themselves because of all of the romantic comedies we've watched, all of the books that we've read. Like, we can't escape it. I have a 4-year-old daughter now, and we watch these, Disney movies, and I'm like, oh my God, this is how it starts. This is
Yes.
how it starts. You are the damsel that needs to be rescued, and you always get married in the end. Um, this these ideas that we have to do things a certain way, that is a pressure that is so strong that of course people will settle. Of course people will get
Mm.
pushed into situations that don't necessarily serve them, that are not the best for them, because they think it's where they're supposed to be. And at some point, at some part in our brains, we might believe, I would rather, speaking as a single person, I would rather not be alone with the wrong person
Mhm, mhm.
than be alone by myself. And,
Yes.
that I felt that way for a long time. I was very, very fortunate that of the men that I did date that were not at all right for me, that they did not let things continue. Like, thank goodness, I would have
Yes,
jumped
yes.
into so many bad situations.
Mm, mm.
And, having met my husband when I was 35 and a half, got married at 38, not at all what I expected, not at all where I had envisioned my life going, or when I thought it would happen. But I am so grateful every single day that I did not settle, because I found
Yes.
someone who is so right for me and is so loving and caring and supportive of me. And both of us always say, like, had we met 10 years earlier, which is when I thought I would meet somebody that I would marry, neither of us were in a place, maturity wise, just
Mm,
experience wise, we were not in a place in our lives where we would have the relationship that we have now. So I am so grateful that I did not settle, but people do it all the time, and I totally understand why. Whether it's a relationship, a job, or, so many other things, we feel
mm.
this pressure, and so sometimes we think it's better to just have that thing in whatever way we can get it than to have to deal with how we move forward without it.
Exactly. So, Laura, when you imagined being single forever, what fear surfaced first?
Yeah. Uh, you know, the thing that just kept going in my mind was you're going to be alone forever. And alone is such a big word, and forever is such a big word. Like, I'm going to be alone forever was the chorus that just sang over and over in my head. That just made me more and more terrified by the
Mhm.
day. Uh, and that encompasses everything. I wanted to have a family, but I realized in my early 30s that I wanted to have a family with someone. It was not something I wanted to do on my own. So I was
Mhm.
beginning to accept that maybe I wouldn't have children because I knew I wouldn't do that on my own. Um, but that didn't mean I wasn't upset about it. And so when I looked at all of my friends who were married, getting married, having babies, having more babies, it just, that can also, having never been in a relationship, it's one of those situations where I didn't even know what I didn't have, so I could let my mind run
Yes.
wild of, like, this
Mhm. Mhm.
perfect world. Like, well, obviously,
Yeah.
once you have that person, your life is gonna be perfect. Not only will that person be there to support you, but what could go wrong in life after that? That is the thing. That is the one thing that I wanted, that I was
Yeah.
convinced my life would start at that point, that my life would be okay, that just finding him, that was the hard part. After that, if I could just get that, then how hard could life possibly be? And that, I think that is what I probably feared the most, was not getting that, and just that belief then that my life was never going to make sense, that it was never just going to fall into place from there, that I was
Mhm.
always going to struggle for the rest of my life.
Yes. And what shifted inside you the moment you stopped trying to fix or control your future? Because at some point,
Yeah, that.
I've, I heard you
Mhm.
say, that you were
Yeah,
able to
that's a
set
good question.
yourself free.
Mhm. And it did not happen overnight. It was a gradual process that I didn't even necessarily know was happening. But I turned 35 and panicked. 30 did not bother me. For some reason, I don't know. I was like, "Hey, 30, whatever. This is fine. I'm still young. I still have plenty of time."
Uh-huh.
I was in a good place professionally. 30 did not freak me out. 35 brought me to my knees. I think I suddenly realized, oh my God, I am now closer to 40 than to 30. And I am still nowhere near being in a relationship, having a family, getting married.
Mhm. Mhm.
None of that seemed possible. And all of a sudden, it felt like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be 40, and I'm still going to be in this situation. And then I'll be
Mhm.
45, and then I'll be 50. And then my life just started kind of spiraling. And eventually, I really hit a rock bottom after turning 35. I was in New York City at the time. I had a wonderful therapist, I had a wonderful psychiatrist. We upped my antidepressant that I had been on for years. That helped. That certainly helped. But also, I I planned a vacation by myself to go down to Mexico. I had
Mhm.
a super weird schedule when I was in TV. I also had nobody to go on these things with, so I was off. I worked weekends, so I was off during the middle of the week, and I was like, you know what? It is cold. It is gross in New York. It is March. It is. Blech. I'm going to the sun for a few days
Yes.
by myself, and I had
Yeah.
done that before, but my first time doing it had been a few years prior, and while it was I'm so glad I did it, but I spent pretty much that entire trip going, "You're here alone. You are here alone. Oh my
Mhm.
God, you are here alone. Everybody around here knows you're here alone." Like that, I could not get that out of my mind.
Yes.
This one was different. I don't know why. This one was different. I think I so badly wanted something to look forward to. And so
Mhm.
I used that trip as like motivation to let's just get to Mexico, get to the sun, have some drinks, relax, like just this is what we're living for. And when I
Mhm.
got down there, I just relaxed. I just enjoyed doing everything on my own, whatever I wanted to do. I didn't have to worry about what anybody else wanted. I did nothing. I laid by the pool. I went down to the beach. I worked out. I got up early every morning and worked out. I didn't have to worry about what anybody else wanted to do. It was all me. And something in that trip like clicked in me of, oh my gosh, you have so much control and agency over your
Mm.
own life. You do, like, how cool is that for this
Yes.
trip? For this trip, you get to decide everything for this trip. And it was very freeing.
Mm.
And so I went back to New York after the trip and started to think like, can I take how I felt about that trip and turn that into how I feel about the bigger picture, about more
Mm.
about my life? Um, And about a month after I was in Mexico, I went out to my brother and his wife were in San Francisco, which is where I live now. But I came out to visit them, and they had just had a baby. My younger brother, who was already married, who
Mm.
just had a baby, and I spent a long weekend with them. And there was one morning we were walking through their neighborhood, just a beautiful, gorgeous spring day in San Francisco. Just the California blue skies, which is just perfect blue, and just it was just a gorgeous morning. And we were walking, my sister-in-law's pushing the stroller. We'd gone to get some coffee and we were walking back to their apartment. And this woman was approaching us, who was an older woman, probably in her 70s, maybe 80s. I really do not remember much about her. I just remember that she existed and that she was, 70s or 80s. She was by herself. She was walking towards us and she just looked so at peace. She had a smile
Mm.
on her face. We may have said hi to her. I don't even remember. But in that moment, I saw this woman by herself in San Francisco, and I just suddenly created this whole story for her in my head that she was a single woman who never had children of her own, but she had nieces and nephews. And, maybe she had moved to San Francisco to be close to them. And here she is living in this beautiful neighborhood. And, maybe she had worked really, really hard and had a lot of professional success to be able to afford to come to retire to a place like this and be close to her family and all the choices that she got to make that got her to this point. And now here she is just walking around like she gets to choose what she wants to do today. And I don't know, something in me clicked. And I realized that up until this point, I had given myself only one potential future, and that
Mhm.
was a husband and a family. And
Yes.
all of the other blanks of your life were filled in because of that. So my career all hinged on that. Where we lived all hinged on that, having him, having that family. That was my entire future. So when I daydreamed about anything, it was all tied up in first having the husband, having the boyfriend who would become the
Mhm.
husband.
The husband.
And I had not given myself any other options. So here I was, 35, only getting older, as we all do. And I did not have that one thing. And I was nowhere near having that one thing.
Mhm.
So, what realistically could I get excited about with my future? Nothing. My future was blank. It was a black hole of nothingness because I was so tied up into one option that was not a path that I was at that
Yeah.
moment heading down. And seeing that woman and kind of creating her story all of a sudden like unlocked this idea that there could be other futures.
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
have to have just that one. What if I did a million other things instead? Like what, maybe I could start daydreaming about that. And kind of in that moment, I realized, I don't have a child, but this is my nephew in front of me. He's only going to get older. He's definitely going to get siblings at some point, most likely. And what if I move to a place close to them? Like, what if I get to be the cool aunt in their lives? And I get that, that maternal itch scratched in a way. And I get to be around my family. And, as I grow older, I have a support system there. Or
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe I want to move to Europe, or maybe, who knows? But unlocking that future to so many more possibilities really shifted something in my brain. And I just got, I finally, for the first time in my life, gave myself permission to dream about a future that did not involve getting married and having a child. Did I
Mhm.
still want those things? Absolutely. But I was starting to see that not only could I possibly be okay without that, but I could be really happy. I could still thrive in different
Mhm.
ways than I had expected, but it would still be successful. It would still would be fulfilling. It still would be a life to love and be proud of. And that's when things changed for me. And suddenly now I was approaching dating as a I don't have to do this. I don't have to meet the person. If I do, cool, but this doesn't have to, I'm going to be okay if it doesn't work. And I met my husband 6 weeks later, which is somewhat coincidence, somewhat not. I don't want this to be like a, so here are your steps to meeting your person, because that's not what that is. But what I will say is when I walked into that first date with my husband, I walked in going, I don't need this. I want it,
Really?
maybe, if he's cool, if this is what I want, but I do not need this. And that was the first time I walked into any date with that mindset, because every date prior to that that I walked into was like, okay, well, this has to be the one, because if it's not, I don't
Mhm.
know the next time you're actually going to get a date. And if he's not it, then who knows the next person who's actually going to want to go out with you again. And so this has to be it. This has to be it. And for him, I was like, we met online. I knew he's British, so I knew he had an English accent, and it's like, well, I'll just go sit and listen to a cool accent and have a glass of wine, and whatever happens, happens. And here we are, 10 years later. So I really truly believe that my husband is the first man who met me on a date, who met the actual me instead of the
Mm,
me who was trying to be what he was looking for, so that I
yes.
could fulfill this. You need to have this work.
Mm. So, how do we stop comparing and trust that our path isn't late, it's different?
I think hearing as many different life stories as possible is
Mhm.
so powerful.
Mm.
We get such a narrow view on what is possible for women, when we watch movies, when we read books, when we see many stories that are glorified in the media. It's a pretty traditional path, and what you start to find out when you talk to more and more women and you actually ask them their stories and you
Mm.
hear what they've been through, very few of us actually follow that in every way. You could see maybe somebody does meet their husband in their 20s and have the babies and have the kids. Well, what if they are then divorced at 35 and now they're
Yes, 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 yes,
starting
yes.
over
Exactly.
again? Or maybe they make a career change and they do something totally different at 50. All of these things that we kind of think by 30 we're supposed to have it all figured out. None of us do. And so the more we can be honest and authentic with each other about our actual stories and tell our stories, just hearing another woman's not typical, atypical story, which is pretty much what we all have. Just hearing that helps us feel a little bit more confident and a little bit more accepting of whatever path we are on ourselves.
Yes,
So I think that the most powerful thing that we can do is be honest with each other and just share our true, authentic experiences.
exactly. It's the way to train our minds to be more open. And, you know, that's why I wanted to create this podcast. I've said it before, listening to other people's stories, seeing behind the spotlight of their life, seeing how they were able to reach the point where they are professionally, emotionally. It opens up other paths for us, because it's true that everyone's path is different. But we're trained in a way through our beliefs to believe that there's only one path, and that's the correct way to do things. Meet somebody, make a family, raise a child, be successful in what you do. And that's the only way that things happen. But it's not. Like,
Mm-mm.
that's not real life. For example, I got married, I got divorced, I have a daughter, uh, which, I always loved children, but I thought that I wasn't ready to become a mother. But when I did, I realized that it was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though my life changed completely. But life is weird, is strange. We
Yes.
get to adjust to things, and it takes time. It takes courage. Things are not always easy. But I think that when you let yourself, go with the flow in a way, surrender in what is happening at that
Hmm.
time, I think things get a little bit easier. For me, they did when I was able to accept what was happening to me. So that's why I say that listening to your story, I just found it so motivating and so inspiring because, especially for women, listening to somebody saying that my first relationship was when I was 35 years old. I don't think that I've ever heard a woman saying that.
Hmm.
You have to be brave enough to say that. But tell me, did becoming a mother changed your sense of meaning?
I've never actually been asked that before. So
Yeah.
I feel like so everything that has happened in my life has shaped me and has led to who I am right now. I mean, just hearing you say the way your life went was not the way you expected, but it's the best thing that could have happened to you.
Mhm.
All of these things. I think that we have these ideas that we're supposed to have it all figured out, and we're just that's just the way we're somehow supposed to just like you become an adult and you're given the handbook and now you know every single thing that is supposed to. How do we ever know though that something wasn't right for us until we go
Mm.
through it and do it? So I really feel like I don't have any advice to give to my younger self because I wouldn't have the advice to give had I not gone through everything that she is about to go through.
Of
And
course.
I feel motherhood kind of falls into that as well. I mean, I did not have it was not this. I will oftentimes hear people say, it absolutely completely changed their lives, and they found that was their purpose, and I love that for people. For me, becoming a mother is it, it was incredible. It's wonderful. I am so grateful every single day that it's the honor of being able to be this little girl's mother and to have this experience. Uh, but also know if I had not had her, I would be growing and learning and evolving in
Mhm.
different ways. And I would be happy and fulfilled in other ways as well. Um, I'm very glad that this is the path that I am going on now. But I do not think that motherhood unlocked something in me that I couldn't have accessed any other way. I mean, there are certain experiences that you have as a mother that obviously you can only have being a mother. I had so much life that was thrown at me as I
Um,
became a mother. I was diagnosed with cancer when my daughter was 7 months old. And so I went from this joy of finally having my daughter after having gone through so much loss with our IVF journey that we went on to get her, and thinking maybe now that I have her, it's this now is the happy ending. Now is when everything is going to click and fall into place. And then realizing just how much life has other plans and
mm,
how there is no moment that's going to give us that clarity on our lives because things are constantly happening. So I went from this just being so grateful to be a mom and to have her, while also, I want to be honest, I was 42 when I had her, grieving the life that I had had before her. I mean, I made it
mhm.
42 years of my life without having to be less selfish and
Yes.
put a small little being's needs ahead of mine. So there was a lot of grief that I had to go through and a
Mm.
lot of change that I had to deal with mentally and emotionally and physically, but certainly mentally and emotionally as I adapted to what my new life was. So I was dealing with all of that, but I was so incredibly grateful to have her and everything that we had been through. And then I'm diagnosed with rectal cancer when she was 7 months old. And now all of a sudden, nothing was guaranteed. This this little girl that I had fought for, I had no guarantees that I was actually going to be there for her, that I was going to see her grow up, that I was going to be a part of anything that I had once again created in my mind as the idea of what was going to happen next. So I was thrown into just the mode of doing everything I could to give myself more days, as many more days as possible. And so, you know, a lot, a lot happened to me at the time that I became a mom. And so that they're all tied together. They all occupy a place in the personal development that got me to where I am right now. And becoming a mother, I love it. I don't love all of it. There are certain things that are really, really hard. But I am very grateful to be going through this experience, to have this opportunity. Um, but I also know that I would have been okay if it had not happened this way.
Mm. Tell me, Laura, when illness entered your life, how did it change your relationship with control?
Oof. I have always loved control. Always loved control. Like man, I am a eldest daughter, type A. I said it already. I love checklists. I love a to-do list. I love you telling me exactly the roadmap to get to where I want to go. I love the idea that I can control things. And I think being single for as long as I was the first time that I had to really understand and really get it through my head that there are so many things that we cannot control. So little is actually under our control. And professionally, I could climb the ranks there. That wasn't all within my control, but there were always steps. There were always, if you do this job, then
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
maybe you could move on to that next. There's a path. There's usually something within your control when it comes to having a partner, a romantic partner, and finding that like you don't control those people. You control yourself. You control how you react. You control how your behavior, but you cannot make somebody fall in love with you.
No,
So
no.
that was my first kind of foray into like realizing you do not have control over very much. And then the fertility journey that struggles that we had, having being a first time mom, the whole postpartum period, and then being diagnosed with cancer, like there is so very little that we can control in life. And I have realized just how much time I had always spent and still do to an extent. I can't like cure myself of wanting control, but so much time and energy that we put on things that we have no control over,
Mm.
and trying so hard to let go of the things that we can't change, and to focus more on how do I react to what does happen, what is
Mm.
within my control, what can I focus on that actually is productive and has true meaning for me. And I think every little twist and turn that has happened has just continue to remind me of how little control we actually do have. And let me just say, I hate it. I would much rather
I
love
think
to be in
everyone
control.
hates.
Uh,
Yeah.
I hate it. But I also hate banging my head against the wall and putting so much effort and thought and just so much of myself into something that I cannot change.
Mm.
And trying to remind myself as often as possible or ask myself the question like, do you actually have control over this? Is this going to happen without you? Is this going to happen in whatever way it's going to happen? Do you actually have agency over this? Most of the time, the answer is no. So then it
Yeah.
becomes, well, then how do I control my reaction to it? How do I control how I participate in this? How do I show up? How do I listen? How do I learn? And it's not easy, but I wish I spent a little less time on the things that I cannot control, but it is a good reminder. And if my story, I think, says anything, it is a constant reminder that very little is within our control.
Yes. So if you remove titles, roles, and milestones, who is Laura now?
Mhm. I am happy. I'm happy. I am surrounded by people who love me. I am surrounded by people that I love. I feel honored that I get to wake up every morning next to somebody who is so supportive, so understanding, who is my biggest cheerleader and whom I can be the biggest cheerleader for
Mm-hmm.
him. I am just so grateful to be a mom, but also to have kind of an endless opportunity to recreate myself and to be whatever I need to be in the moment. Right now, I am mostly a stay-at-home mom,
Mm-hmm.
which, 10 years ago, if you would have told me this would have happened, I would have been like, you are insane. I need to work. And I realized, like, stop trying to control everything. I wanted to be with her, especially going through treatment and going through all of that and
Mm.
realizing just how short this whole experience really is and how much joy I do have in being home with her, which, is lovely to say when she is also 4 years old. And, toddlers
Yeah.
are toddlers. So, there are moments, there are lots of moments where I would love to escape to an office, but this is where I am right now. And I also know that each part of my life, these are all just little chapters. This doesn't mean that I will never work full time again. This doesn't mean, I
Of course.
have the opportunity to continue to reinvent myself in whatever ways work for me in that moment. So I think what I could hope for the most and what I could say I am a lot of the time, not all the time, no one is all the time, but is happy. I am happy to be just going through life and learning and experiencing and just being surrounded by people who really matter to me.
Of course. Laura, what triggers comparison for you now?
Mm. Mhm. Social media absolutely does. I I really wish I was immune to it. I had to
Nobody
at
is.
one point. Yeah, no one is. At one point, several years back, I had to unfollow all of the fashion influencers that I had been following because I didn't have any money left, and I was just constantly comparing myself to everything that they had. Uh, and then I had to, after having my daughter, I had to start distancing myself from lots of like how to parenting things like because
Oh,
I
yes.
just
Yes.
I it is so easy to compare your experience to these beautiful things you see on social media. So social media is my big trigger for comparison. I do also have to say, and this it surprises me, but it doesn't. I've been out of the TV business for almost for 7.5 years now, just over 7 years. Yeah, that's about right. 8 years. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can't do math right now. But 8-ish years I have been out of the business, and I do not miss it in any way. Like, I do not miss that lifestyle. I do not miss that grind. I do not miss the belief that I had to be perfect and that all I just constantly had to be moving up in the ranks. But I was out at a restaurant yesterday and the football playoffs, the NFL playoffs are happening right now. I don't watch sports anymore. I don't
Oh,
care. I
no.
I know too much about how it works that I don't
Mm.
want anything to do with it anymore. But we were at a restaurant and one of the football playoff games came up, and a woman who I always had compared myself to pops up. She's still doing it. She's still on the sideline. She is one of the biggest names in American football TV
Mhm.
journalism. And here she is, she's my age and she's still doing. And there was this part of me that was like, I am so glad I am not there, but also I never made it. I never made it there. And that was always what I wanted and what I thought I was going to do. And
Mm.
I left before I got there. So there's little things like that that I don't expect that I'll still care about, but man, I do. A pretty picture, a pretty image, a pretty anything. I'm like, oh, my house doesn't look like that. It's just, man, yeah, social media. That's my trigger.
I will say that again. It's everyone's trigger. I'm sure it's everyone's trigger.
Mhm.
So, how do you protect your inner peace from other people's expectations or projections?
Good question. Removing myself from the situation as much as possible when I can. When I know, like, I need to stop following certain people. I need to take some time off of my phone. I need to go do an hour of yoga. I'm not good at meditating, but I do love breath work. So maybe I need to go do a breath work session,
Mm.
something to remove again, what can we control? I can control how much I consume. So if I get to the
Yes,
point where I'm really not feeling good about it, okay, the only thing I can control is how much of it I continue to expose myself to. So where I can step away, I try to, and that's not always easy. And it still doesn't make you. It still doesn't keep all of that from coming in, but in
of
what
course
little
not.
ways that I can stop, I try to step away from it.
Yes, yes. And what truth about yourself took the longest to forgive?
Probably embracing the fact that I do not have it all figured out, and I'm not gonna get to a point where I do. I think I expected so much of myself for so long that I should not be making mistakes. I should not be
Mm.
I judged myself a lot. I mean, I still do. But I think realizing that every every mistake, every choice that I wish I could go back and do differently, every bad date, every bad conversation at work, every friendship that ended, just all the things that we don't love about our
Mm.
past all contributed to who we are right now. And there's no way we could ever know so many things are not right for us unless we actually did them. And giving myself that permission to know that I am never going to have it figured out, and that's okay. We can only do our best. But yeah, I was the type of person for a really long time that was living for the, oh, I wish I could just go tell back in time and tell myself this, and then I wouldn't have done it. And yet, why do I have that advice to give? I have that advice to give because I did it. I went through it.
Yes, yes,
And instead of looking at mistakes as an embarrassment, it is how we know it was a mistake. You can't know until you go through it.
of
And
course
then
not.
in 10, 20, 30 years from now, I will look back at my life now and be like, oh my goodness, what was she doing? So we're all learning constantly.
Yes. So, what would you say to someone that feels like they're running out of time?
You are doing a great job. It does not feel that way so often. I do not need to know you. I do not need to know your story to know that you are doing your best. And it is so hard when
Mm.
things are happening that you do not want, that you do not expect, that you did not plan for. That is hard. And you deserve to feel all the things that you are feeling about it. And yet your life is still going on. You are still doing it despite all of that pain and all of that
Mm.
doubt and all of whatever emotions it is that you are feeling about it. You are doing it. You are still getting through. And I'm proud of you. I hope that you can find ways to be proud of yourself because you are doing a great job.
Yes. If timelines disappeared tomorrow, what do you think people would finally allow themselves to feel?
Oh, good question. There have been a lot of good questions here.
Thank you so
I
much.
think it's different. It would be different for everybody, you know? Maybe you finally get to see your life without blinders
Mm.
and see all of the actual possibilities that are out there. The one thing that I did always kind of have right, I don't know if I actually fully understood it or processed it to the extent that I now have, but I remember when I first graduated from college and went off into the real world and had to get a job. And I'm in TV, and people would always ask me, they love to ask me, what is your dream job? And I had ideas of things that I
Mhm.
wanted to get to, but my answer was always the same. I said, I don't have a dream job because I know the industry evolves so much and everything happens so much that my dream job might not even exist yet, or I
Mhm.
might not even know it exists. So, why I'm not going to focus on one thing because if I do, I might
Yes.
actually miss the thing that is the dream job. And
Mm.
that to me is kind of like what timelines do to us. And they put blinders on us thinking that we have one way. And if those blinders come off, oh my God, suddenly you can see the world. You can see that there are actually options out there that you did not even know exist,
Mhm.
but could be the best thing that could happen to you.
Yes. Yes, yes. And what do you wish women would stop apologizing for in their lives?
Everything. Everything. We and myself, oh my God, myself included, I apologize so much. Um, Everything. I mean, yeah, there are sometimes we do things that deserves an apology, but for the most part, you have nothing to apologize for with your choices, with your life, with where
Mhm.
you are, with what you have experienced. I don't care if you look back on it and think that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I wish I hadn't done it. You still don't need to apologize for it. You did it. You're learning. You have nothing to apologize for, short of murdering people or embezzling tons of money or, all of those things. Obviously, that's
Yes.
bad. But women are constantly made to feel guilty for
Mm.
whatever choices they make. We cannot win in so many ways. So I wish myself included that we could just pretty much stop apologizing for everything.
Exactly. Exactly. And what is the quietest, truest thing you hope people hold on to from this conversation?
Oh, I hope that you can find space to maybe look at the life you are living from a different angle, or just give yourself some grace for where you are, what you have been through, all of the possibilities that could lay ahead. Um, my daughter's middle name is Grace, and that is
Oh.
not a coincidence. I chose that name for a specific reason to remind myself, to hopefully remind her that the one of the best things we can do for ourselves is give ourselves grace. We are doing life for the first time. Every day
Mm.
we wake up, it is the first time we are doing that day. How are we supposed to know what to do and how to make it perfect? We are all doing this for the first time.
That's so beautiful and so true. So, Laura, where can people find you? And what are you up to now?
I Yeah, well, so my daughter is in preschool, so I have a few hours each week to myself. So I'm easing my way back into kind of figuring out where I go from here. But you can absolutely find me on social media, Laura B. Behnke on Instagram. That is where I show up the most. I am also
Uh-huh.
on Substack. I have a weekly newsletter, which is called The Life Actually, because, there's the life you thought you were going to have, and then there's your life actually.
Actually.
And it's the actually that holds all of the possibilities if we actually choose to accept it. So that is the place where I am able to spend a bit because I'm a writer by like that is I've always been a writer. Even when I was on TV, I still considered myself a writer. And that I love being able to have longer form newsletters and just be able to kind of get different topics that I've been thinking about and put that
Mhm.
into words. Hopefully, there will be a book coming soon. I'm working on that. That is a
Oh,
2026 project. But you will, if you find me on Substack or on Instagram, you will know all about it as it happens.
great, great. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for so much for having me, for giving me a space to tell my story and to hopefully connect with other people. I think that's what really matters. And so I appreciate what you are doing with your podcast and finding ways for all of us to connect on a deeper level.
So, to all of you, remember, as we always say, ego is here, you are here, and that's enough.